Hello everyone and welcome to a bonus episode of the Age Group Triathlon podcast where I'm going to be looking at 70.3 race day nutrition. Now, like all the other bonus episodes, this is a webinar that I've put together, for education but also for marketing purposes. So I'm not putting it out as a regular episode. However, this subject is so important, I cannot express how important this is. If you are taking on a 70.3 this year, if you have struggled with your nutrition in the past over that distance, or if you just think maybe one day you'd like to do a 70.3, you need to listen to this. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I had an absolute disaster. My first 70.3 that was completely avoidable if I'd made the right choices with my nutrition. Now, as with all of these bonus episodes, you can find the webinar itself down in the show notes where you can watch the video. There are a few visual clues with this one, not as much as some of the other webinars, but if you prefer video content anyway, go and watch that down there. But if you are just on a long drive or a long run, sit back and enjoy. I will be doing a second webinar. I'll be releasing it in the next sort of couple of days, I reckon, on IRONMAN nutrition for the full distance, because it does differ enough to warrant its own webinar, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Without any further ado, let's jump into the webinar. Hello everybody, welcome to my webinar about 70.3 race day nutrition for first time athletes. Now this is a webinar for people who are taking on their first 70.3 distance triathlon or middle distance or half distance. It's where we have a 1900 meter swim, 90-kilometer bike give or take, and a half marathon at the end. And this webinar is to help you make sure that you get your nutrition right, because it is an enormous part of performance, and this is something I'm going to touch on. Quick disclaimer, I'm recording this in the middle of an absolutely stonking heat wave in the UK. So I apologise if I'm maybe a little sweatier than you'd normally expect, and we have a thunderstorm that I'm hoping is going to break at some point soon, so you might hear some background thunder if you're unlucky. But let's get stuck into the subject at hand. So this is race day nutrition. This is what it is that you need to eat to be able to fuel your performance. So before we get started, a little bit about me as a coach. I've been coaching since 2016, so it's been 10 years now. Got over 50 triathlon finishes from sprint to Ironman distance. British triathlon high performing coach, a certified nutrition coach, and I'm an Ironman coach. I forgot to put that on there, but at the end of the day, I have invested in my education. I'm not the kind of coach who's just going to mumble something about eating flapjack. Okay, I've invested in my education to help make sure that I can help you get round race day with the minimal digestive upset possible. So nutrition will make or break your race. Okay, this is super important. All of the training in the world is not going to compensate for poor nutrition. If you get nutrition wrong, you might as well have not bothered training. It is this important. So talking you through my early triathlon journey is a very fresh-faced version of me there in my early 20s. So my first 2 years of the sport, I was probably racing 7 times a year, maybe more. Podium at small events. I won my club championship 5K event, and I ran a 1:34 half marathon at my debut. So I was pretty handy. I was loving life. I was really enjoying it. And then record scratch. How did I get here? Okay, first 7.3, I completely blew up. Okay, the expression probably tells you all you need to know. I walked most of the run. I'd say about sort of 70-80% of the run. I was forced to a fast walk. Poor nutrition was the primary factor. Now, could I have done better with training? Yes, obviously we could all do. It goes without saying that I went into the event underprepared, but the number one issue was poor nutrition. I think I had an energy bar and I drank half a bottle of water on the bike. This is a 90-kilometer bike, and the bike took me about 3 hours. So by the time I finished the bike, I was about 3.5 hours, 4 hours into the event, taking into account transitions and the swim, all this. I can't remember my swim time now. But I was deep into the race and I barely had anything. I might have had another gel, I can't remember. But I remember I got off the bike and I looked at the fact that I hadn't eaten or drunk much. I thought, it doesn't really matter. This is the run. I am the best on the run. I'm a little rocket ship on the run. So here we go. I ran and I went straight past the aid station. It was 3 laps of a 7K course. There's only one aid station. Went straight past it. And I thought, nope, I feel good. I'm going to keep on going. And then catastrophic implosion a few hundred meters later. Far enough that I didn't really want to turn around and go back to get some food, just try to press on. But I remember I just couldn't run. My legs were just not responding. Okay, everything was going dark, it was horrible. And from that 1:34 half marathon that I did, I ended up being, I think it was 2:56 to complete that run course. Okay, complete disaster. And nutrition is the biggest factor. And I want to help you avoid that mistake. So we're going to start with some basic theory, macronutrients. Some of you will likely be aware of this, some of you maybe not. So we've got carbohydrates that come in the form of grains, fruits, vegetables, and sugars as well, I should include. But those sugars can often be found in fruits and the like. We have fats, which are dairy products and oils primarily. And we have protein, which is animal products, pulses, soy, these kinds of sort of protein sources that a lot of you will be familiar with now. I mean, relative to when I did my first 70.3, I think the overall literacy of nutrition in life has improved. And, you know, we're all being told we should eat more protein, we should do more of this, less of that. But protein, you know, we want to make sure that it's useful for recovery, but on race day, it's probably not so much. Very few foods contain a single macronutrient. So if you look at something such as maybe a block of cheese or some olive oil, you can say, yeah, that's completely fat. But the fact is, most foods, I mean, even I look at sort of protein sources, they're pulses, they are carbohydrate as well as protein, even though they have a high protein content per gram. So it's very rare that you find these in isolation. When we're on race day, though, carbs are king. So this is your primary fuel source on race day. So they're easy digestible, give you a quick energy boost. They're easy to transport as well because you don't need to worry about them spoiling. If you want to go out and take on an event like a 70.3 with some beef jerky or a boiled egg in your back pocket, I think you're gonna have a bit of a bad time. It's gonna be rancid by the time you get to eat it. So they're easy to transport, they're light, they're cheap and readily available relative to fats and protein. They are cheap because they encompass such a wide variety. And they don't go bad or curdle. So there's just a lot of reasons for us to focus on carbohydrate. The main one being a quick energy boost. Carbohydrates are digested and absorbed super easily. The downside is that when you consume carbohydrate, is that it burns off really quickly. So if you imagine if you ate some Haribo, some sweets, you would feel you have a bit of a lift up in energy, and then you probably crash about 30 minutes later. You get this spike in energy. We want to avoid that spike. We want to have a nice consistent intake. But if you have something like a steak, that will keep you fuller for longer, and you'll also probably not feel like going for a run after that because it's still digesting in your stomach. It's going to be making you feel unwell. So, moving on to the concept of glycogen. Now, if you imagine your body is a battery, okay, and your energy levels are going to rise and they're going to decrease over time, you know, as we go about our day. This is also known as blood sugar. People talk about, you know, when they have low blood sugar, they might start to get a little bit dizzy. They might start to feel really sort of weak. And this is, you know, your body's glycogen stores. Now, it's known as blood sugar because that's how people will measure that. If somebody can take a blood test, they can identify how much glucose they have in their system. And if that is low, then they will replace that and give you more sugar as a result. But glycogen is like a big battery. And when you start your event, hopefully it's going to start at full. Okay, if you've had a decent breakfast, if you've eaten enough in the morning to be able to go into this, sorry, go into this feeling, you know, like you've got lots of energy. But it's only going to last around about 90 minutes in most cases. Some people it's less, it can be close to 60 minutes. Other people they can go for longer without replacing. But for most people, anything over 90 minutes, you're going to need to start thinking about a strategy of replacing these glycogen stores because you get a rapid performance decline once you hit this sort of once you exhaust your body's supply of glycogen. Because the body can survive, it can burn fat instead of carbohydrate to help it try to sort of to get by as if it was in a survival situation. But the body can oxidize fat fast enough to be able to fuel your triathlon effort. Okay, no matter well how fat adapted someone is, you need carbohydrates to be able to ensure that your body is able to digest and give you the energy that you need. If you fall off of that, sort of hit this point of massive decline, if you start to get dizzy, if you start to be staggering around the race course, feeling like you're completely empty, like I did in my first 70.3 when I got all this wrong, also known as bonking, or in some cases hitting the wall. Now, hitting the wall is a term that's used in marathon running more than anything else, but for the most part, it is going to be referring to a state where you are just sort of completely and totally unable to continue. Your body feels absolutely empty. It can be training, but more often than not, it's nutrition because most people do a half marathon with very little thought to nutrition, whereas they do a marathon and they don't eat enough and they hit this wall. So we need to replace this glycogen battery. Now, carbohydrate is by far the quickest way to replace glycogen levels, something known as the glycemic index, where the higher up the glycemic index of food is, the easier it is for the body to absorb it. So if you look at simple sugars such as sort of just pure glucose, sweets, many fruits, the body can digest those really quickly. Whereas if you look at something like oats, like porridge, that's what people call slow release energy. That's low on the glycemic index. So we do need to be leaning towards glycogen. Now there's a wide variety of sports nutrition as well as real food options available. Now sports nutrition is specifically formulated to help you with your performance. So it's easy to carry, it's easy to digest, everything about it is optimized to help you complete your triathlon. But they are expensive, um, albeit they are balanced nutritionally, to give you the pure energy, they are expensive. And if you are looking at taking on sort of two or three of these products an hour, this can get really quite expensive, especially because we need to practice our fueling ahead of race day. So you do need to draw a line and go, well, at what point do I have real food? At what point do I have sports nutrition? I know some people who never touch any sports nutrition products and they rely purely on real food, eating to their own tastes, depending on their digestive system. That's completely up to them, but broadly speaking, they're not the fastest athletes. I think the athletes who are working at a higher percentage of their max, those who are going faster, their body is working harder, it's having to sort of direct a higher percentage of its energy to racing and less to digestion. So you'll see all the sort of the fastest athletes do tend to use these sports nutrition products, at least primarily in their nutrition. So I'm going to go through the different varieties of sports nutrition, why you might want to consider each of them. Now, gels are the quickest way for you to refill your energy, your glycogen stores. They're a semi-solid and they're made up primarily of sugar. In fact, in many cases, exclusively by sugar. But they're in this easy to digest format. As a result of this, they are very easy to digest, and it also releases the energy really quickly because this glucose, this sugar gets into our bloodstream, and suddenly it's really easy for the body to be able to send it around the body. As soon as you get that first mouthful of an energy gel, your mouth is already starting to absorb some of that sugar, and as it goes into the stomach and digests, quite quickly you will start to feel that your energy levels are being topped up. Especially if you're having a bit of a wobble, you start to feel a bit hungry, a bit weak, have that, and you start to feel much better in just a few minutes. They can easily be carried in a pocket, and you can store lots of them. So in most tri-suit pockets, you can fit probably two, maybe three energy gels. That's quite a lot. At 30 grams of carbohydrate each. That means you can store around 90 grams of carbohydrate in just a pocket on your tri-suit. It's not to be sniffed at. But the downside is there's only so many of these that you can stomach. Having one for most people is absolutely fine. Some people, they don't work for them. They feel sick, they feel unwell, they can't touch energy gels. Most people are fine with them. But by the time that you want to have like your seventh one in just 3 hours, it's going to be difficult on the digestive system. You're going to think, I just never want to even look at an energy gel again. Again, for running, for shorter distances, if you're doing a half marathon, absolutely recommend these. But we are taking on a middle distance triathlon. Now, The sort of average finishing time for a 70.3 is around about the 6 hour mark. Can you imagine just eating nothing but sugar for 6 hours? It would be a bit touch and go, wouldn't it? You wouldn't be trusting a fart when you're on the race course. In fact, that's always a terrible idea whenever you're racing medium to long distance triathlon. But your digestive system is not going to be asking for loads of this. It's going to be struggling a little bit. We also run the risk of flavor fatigue. So if you find a that you really like, I mean, I'm quite partial to the science and sport apple gels, but there are only so many of those that I can have. So by mixing up the flavor, as well as the texture, having either other brands of gel or other foods with it, it can help you avoid getting to the point where you think, oh God, I don't even want to look at a gel ever again. Um, they're also quite expensive, so that's something you really need to consider. It's one thing if you are just having if you're getting sort of a box of 30 that's going to see you through for quite some time. But if you are buying them, especially buying them individually, or if you are fueling every single training session with them, the cost can add up. Energy bars, these are the original sports nutrition product. They are oat-based energy source. Tend to be binding together with sugar, and they might have some fruit in them as well. So you have the oats for the slower release energy, but you also have some sugar in there to give you a bit of an immediate pickup as well. So they're quite versatile in that respect. They are harder to digest because they are oats, because they are solid. They are a little harder to chew, as well as to swallow, and for your body then to digest, especially if your hydration levels are low. That's something to bear in mind. Is that the better hydrated you are, the less likely you are to suffer with these digestive issues. But they're less suitable for a run. However, on the bike, they are quite good. It's nice to have something a bit more solid, I find. If I'm going to be eating sort of very little in the way of real food for 6 hours, I'm going to want something solid to sit in my stomach, not just sugars. Now, you will hear some athletes, professional athletes, talk about, oh, that they have like a purely liquid diet. Okay, that works for them, but it doesn't work for most people, and they're out there for a lot less time than most of us are. Um, they sit better on the stomach, as I said, and there are homemade alternatives that are cheaper. So you can get some oats, you can get some sugar, you can get some fruits, you can get all the ingredients that you need, and you can make your own energy bars, which is an awful lot cheaper. Cook them in the oven. There are options out there to help you with this. Then we have carb mix, which is a sort of a liquid energy in bottle. So it's a powdered mix that you add to your water, and there will be sort of dosing requirements, dosing recommendations on how much it is that you put in each bottle. And then you shake this up, and this powder then dissolves and essentially becomes sort of sugar water. And then every time that you take a sip of your drink, you're replacing carbohydrate as well as rehydrating yourself. And they're often used alongside other fuel sources. So if you were just to rely purely on carb mix, there is a chance that you're going to need the toilet, stop the toilet several times in the race because you're taking on that much fluid. It's also going to feel quite sort of sickly after a while having that much sugary water. Um, but it is easily digestible. It goes down very easily. It can be mixed to taste as well. So if just because the tub of powder that you get says you need to add 3 scoops into a bottle, doesn't mean you need to. You can have 2 if you want, if that sits better on your stomach. Or you can add 4 if you have a stomach of lead. And many of these contain electrolytes. They contain salt, which we're going to touch on in a minute, is really important for our performance. So these again are quite often when I'm building a nutrition plan for an athlete, we'll talk about how many bottles they have and what they're going to have in each bottle so that we can really get a nice fueling strategy down. Electrolytes, as I touched on, these are for replacing salt that's lost through sweat. Now, when you sweat, like I am sat here in the middle of a heat wave in a very well insulated new build house, I'm losing salt as I am sweating. And if I don't replace that salt, I'm going to be in trouble because it's essential that the main function of salt is to allow for, well, sodium is to allow for the movement of water to move through cell membranes. So that is allowing when I drink water for the fluid to make its way into my organs through my cells to help aid their function. And this process helps prevent a condition called hyponatremia. Now, this is quite a dangerous condition, which you are sort of quite prone to in a 70.3, even though it's very, very rare that this will happen. I do want to cover it. So, if we are not replacing sodium, but we are drinking a lot, and this is this is the best advice that people have for those taking on endurance events. Keep drinking. Make sure you keep drinking. But if we're drinking loads and loads of water, but we're not taking out any sodium, that water's it makes its way into our organs, into our cells, but it can't make it back out again because there's no sodium. The result of this is that our organs and our body it starts to kind of to swell because there's all this water in here that our body can't sort of modulate, that it can't sort of move the water where it needs to be. It can't get the water out of organs, including the brain. And this is really important because hyponatremia, it can be fatal due to brain swelling. Now your brain, it sits in your skull. It's quite a tight fit in there. The reason is that if we hit our head, that we don't want the brain to be rattling around in there, so that's going to increase our risk of concussion. But if we are drinking loads of fluids and we haven't got enough sodium, our brain is going to start to swell inside of our skull. And it's going to start off, it's just going to feel like a headache. You're going to feel like you've got a bit of a headache, which, a lot of headaches are simply the brain just slightly swelling. You're going to have a headache, and then you might start to feel nauseous, you might start to feel dizzy, and these neurological symptoms will start to increase. You can find yourself vomiting, you can find yourself staggering around the race course a little bit, feeling dizzy. After time, you can actually find yourself slipping into a coma. The body would put itself into a preventative coma because it can feel that the brain is swelling inside the skull and that we're really at risk. And people in endurance events do unfortunately die of hyponatremia. This is very rare. It's generally people who are out on the course for longer. So the longer you're out there, the more prone you are to this if you don't take on sufficient levels of salt. It's also going to have a massive impact on your performance as well. So it is critical that we are replacing electrolytes. Now, the amount that you need to consume, it depends on you as an individual. So myself, I got a sweat test done by Precision Fuel and Hydration, and the sweat test came back and it said, look, you don't sweat much, but when you do sweat, it's incredibly concentrated with salt. Whereas other people, they'll do a sweat test and they'll find that though they sweat buckets, so there's loads of liquid coming off of them, they don't actually have an awful lot of salt that they're losing through that sweat, so they don't need to take on a huge amount. Now, Precision Fuel and Hydration, they have a great test that you can take, and I'm going to put a link down underneath this webinar for you to look at. Where it will help you analyze how much salt it is that you need to be replacing. So this takes into account the volume as well as the concentration, and you can then work out which of their powders you need to have because they have different strengths of powders. I used a really weak powder for ages because I didn't sweat much. I thought I didn't need much. Turns out, actually, due to the very high concentration of sodium that I lose in my sweat, I needed to take on more. So that would be down there for more information for you. Then we have aid stations. So this is fuel that's provided by the race, sports nutrition products that are handed out on the race course. And every middle distance event will have these. I don't know, it's hard to imagine a middle distance event not having an aid station, let's put it that way. They'll be available on the bike and the run course. In the swim, you don't really need to be replacing glycogen, but on the bike and the run, this will be essential. They'll be at regular intervals, so they'll often be most of the courses at middle distance events are done on a lap basis. There will be at staggered points on the lap, and you'll be able to you'll know when it is you're approaching the aid station. Sometimes if it's a one lap, you'll just need to have a look at the course itself to work out where they are. So in these, they have water. They'll have for you. They'll often have Coca-Cola. They'll have gels. They may have, in some cases, some sort of like salty real food like pretzels or tortilla chips or something if you just can't look at another gel ever again. There are lots of aid stations at bigger events, so the official Ironman events that you go to, you will have absolutely loads of these, and they'll be in like high concentration, and they'll be really well stocked. Smaller events, they may only have one lap on the course. Okay, it's critical that you try the products they have ahead of time. Email the race organisers if you can't find the information on the website. Ask them what nutrition is being provided, so you can try that ahead of the race. The last thing we want to do is to be trying something new on race day. This is a cardinal sin in triathlon, but especially when it comes to nutrition, because you can go, oh, let me try this gel or this bar that they're giving out. Let me try this drink, and then it could give you very instant diarrhea. It could really just like go straight through if it doesn't agree with you. Your stomach's already fragile. Your stomach is already, you've already thrown a load of nutrition at it. If you put in something it's not used to, it could end up throwing a wobbler. Um, and these aid stations, they can be chaotic, like especially on the bike. You have lots of cyclists kind of weaving, trying to cut each other up, trying to get to the aid station. Changing their mind last minute and deciding they do want a bottle of water after all. If you are approaching an aid station on the bike and there is an aid station on sort of the left, if you are in the UK or Australia or other countries that where they're on the left, then stay to the right if you don't want to use the aid station. If you're just using your own nutrition, if you're completely self-sufficient, stay to the right, stay out of the way of everything that's going on there, and vice versa if you're on the continent or in the States where they drive on the other side of the road. But you cannot blag your race nutrition. You will crash and burn like I did. It's not like you can't just think, oh, let me just sort of work it out. I'll just have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It works in Olympic. If you've done Olympic distance triathlon before, I'll just have a bit of this, I'll just have a little bit of that. You will crash, you will burn, you will have a terrible time out there, I'm afraid. So we need to ensure that we have a plan. Now, when nutrition goes wrong, the wheels really come off your race. So you can end up with nausea and vomiting. I remember I did 70.3 Staffordshire and I was running along on the course and this guy overtakes me and as he's overtaking me, he just projectile vomits onto his shoes. And I could tell that it caught him by surprise as much as it caught me by surprise. I did a bit of a jump to the right to avoid the splatter. But this can, if you get it wrong, it can really affect you. And nothing is going to derail your event more than having your head in a bush for 30 seconds as you bring up all the nutrition that you had throughout the day. I think most of us know, when it is that you are sick, when it is that you do vomit, it's very rare that that's just a one-off. The chances are that will recur over the next couple of hours as your body tries to get rid of absolutely everything in it. Constipation and diarrhea is another issue. So diarrhea is more frequent, more common, where suddenly just everything just wants to fall through you instantly. And you can find that your run, rather than it being a really good strong run, you're just trying to make it from aid station to aid station because you're worried that if you run, something might come leaking out. You're power walking instead whilst clenching to try to make it to the next portaloo, okay? You did not put in all of these hours of training for that to be your reality on race day. Stomach cramps, really popular. A lot of professional triathletes still suffer with these. And this is the thing with nutrition, is that there is never any guarantee that everything's going to be fine and everything is going to work. Now, a lot of professionals, they'll be pushing the upper limit of what it is that they can digest, more so than age groupers. But just because you suffer with digestive issues on the run or the bike doesn't always mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes the plan may work perfectly in training, but on race day, with the nerves, with various issues, it could be as well if you swallowed some water in the swim, that doesn't help. There's never any guarantee that you won't end up with these symptoms. It will slow you to a walk on the run if you have these symptoms, and you'll end up with your performance being determined by your stomach, not your legs. So all of those threshold sessions, all those long runs, all those hill reps, all those intervals, the speed work, all that time that you spent in the gym to get yourself run fit and explosive so you can have a fantastic run split, your training counts for nothing if you have digestive issues. It is an absolute disaster. So, how can we prevent this disaster? Well, as I mentioned, there's no way to guarantee success. There is always the chance that something can go wrong and something will go wrong. So, we need a plan. So what goes into this nutrition plan? Well, how many grams of carbohydrate an hour is it that we are taking? Okay, there was lots of differing opinion on this. Lots of people find that some things work for them, some things don't. We need to have a figure in our head that we're aiming for, that we know that we can digest while also supporting our performance. What form does this carbohydrate take? Well, the carbohydrate take, is it going to be gels? Is it going to be bars? Is it going to be are we going to be using carb mix? How much real food are we having? What does it look like? We can't just grab what looks good on the day. How much fluid is it that we are ingesting per hour? That's a huge one. How much salt do we need to consume? Again, I touched on the importance of that. How is it we are carrying our nutrition? We have a bike. We can probably carry two, maybe three bottles on this bike. How is it that we're going to have our electrolytes, our carb mix, our water? Where is it we're going to put our gels? How can we like take them onto the frame? What's the idea? We have this plan, but how is it that we're going to actually practically make that work? And also, of course, what's available on the course. If you can't find out what's available on the course, email the race organisers because you need to know. You can't just turn up and have generic gels on the day, I'm afraid. Or you'd be very lucky to get away with it. So, I can help work with you to create a nutrition consultation. So, you can work with me, a professional, so hundreds of athletes with this to create your plan. So I can help you choose an hourly intake target. How many grams of carbohydrate is an hour that we need? Is it 60, 70, 80, 90? Is it more? Casper Storms, when he won the Ironman World Championship, I think he was on 130 grams of carbohydrate an hour. Is that what we need to be looking at? We need to find the best ideas on the best ways to hit this target. How is it we're going to pace it? How is it that we are going to make sure that we get in the nutrition that we want when we need it? What is it that we're going to put on the bike? We need to get answers to all these questions. We need the right bike upgrades to carry our equipment. So do we need rear facing bottles on the bike? Are they going to be faster? What's the aero penalty of having bottles straight on the bike? Are we going to have a torpedo system at the front? Are we going to have a bottle system at the front? Is there integrated solutions within your tri bike? We need to understand how we're going to start moving this around. We'll know how to troubleshoot issues on race day by helping explain to you how everything works and how you can overcome things. If you drop some nutrition, what do we do? Help us understand all this. And this puts you in the strongest possible position on race day. So this is 90-minute session, which costs £75, which when you consider the amount that you're already spending on your event, and the fact that this could save you 2 hours, maybe more, on your race day relative to if you ignore it and just hope for the best, okay? I'd like to think that's a pretty sound investment. But let's be honest, not everyone has £75 to spend on their nutrition. So I also have a nutrition course. Now, this comes free with every consultation. So create your own race day plan. I'll give you the information that you need, the background, the theory, the science to help you be able to make the right informed decisions. You can look at your carbohydrate, fluid, and sodium targets, get all of those worked out. Understand how to reduce the stomach upset, understand the why behind the nutrition. So I'll talk about the science and the theory if you're interested. And it's all pragmatic advice. Some of the nutrition advice out there, it really is a bit sort of head in the sky. People who aren't actually racing these events like we do, they're basing it all on theory and the best case scenario. Okay, this is all real world advice that you can use on race day. I'm not drowning you with unnecessary information, it's everything that you need to know. And also how to adjust when things go wrong. Now, you get the first two modules of this course for free. And there is a link, there's a button below this webinar where you can click on that and you can find out where you can get yourself these first free two modules. And if you decide that you want to get the rest of the course, that's £22.50. There aren't many triathletes out there who can't afford £22.50 to be able to really ensure that they know everything they need to about triathlon going into their race. So don't leave your performance up to chance. Okay, you've done too much work, you've spent too much money, you've invested too much of your time to be able to just wing it on the day and hope for the best. Okay, the 70.3 is a massive step up. The jump up from Olympic to 70.3 is the biggest between any distances. It's bigger than the jump between 70.3 and Ironman because of all these additional considerations. Can't afford to leave it to chance. My email is there on screen, simon@phasontriathlon.com. Drop me an email if you've got any questions, if you want to follow up or you want to be able to book a consultation without going through my website. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found it useful, and I'm wishing you the absolute very best of luck with your event. I hope you found that useful. I'm going to include the link to the consultation and the link to the free course down in the show notes, as well as a link to my 70.3 training plans if you need some help with the preparation for that. So, thank you once again for your company. Hope you found that useful. Wishing you the very best with the preparation for your 70.3, whether your race is next weekend or next year. Take care, and speak to you all soon.